everybody. Welcome here today to another Supplier Spotlight. And I am here with the wonderful Tracy Bradley of Haversley's. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm looking great. You're looking great. And that's all we need to kick off here
You're
right
too
away.
kind.
So, Tracy, we met at the negotiator conference when I was being particularly well behaved for no particular reason. But
And fabulously dressed. Let's not forget.
well, of course, I like to obviously distract people from the fact there's nothing else going on. But we had a great conversation talking about your business, and I think if we talk about this, do you present yourself? Is it business transfer agent is the official title, or is that a slightly different niche?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So basically, this is, as we were saying when we met the neg and on off screen as well, is everyone's exiting at some stage, whether they want it or not, whether it's planned or unplanned. So this is something that everybody has to take care of. And although I think it's fair to say some people might not even be thinking about this at the moment, if I understand it right, in terms of seeing best practice, it's never too early to start thinking about this, even if you might not get the wheels in motion earnestly for some years to come. Would that be just right, just to tee that off?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Simon, we all go into business and we all want to make a success of it. But ultimately, whether it's now, whether it's 5 months in the future, whether it's 5 years in the future or 35 years in the future, we are ultimately going to want to sell our business and get what we put into it out of it. So I think that always needs to be in the back of any business owner's mind.
And that essentially is what you're here to do, is to ensure that for your clients, you are eking every last drop out of the value of the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
cool. And so that we're going to talk. So putting the title is putting the sale of your business in safe hands, and that's going to make sense to a lot of people. So can we just start right at the beginning, if that's okay, and talk about who are Haversley, give us a bit of background on the business, and of course yourself, as you are obviously owner and MD of the business, aren't you?
I am indeed. So Haversley are specialists in the sales of lettings and estate agencies. We've been around for over 12 years. And in that time, we've been lucky enough to build a fantastic, solid reputation as specialists in, what I'd call a niche field, to be
Yeah.
honest. We've got a database of over 5,000 and more qualified buyers across the country. These include independent agencies, big and small. And, it's great because we've got fabulous relationships with all the major corporates in the market as well.
Yeah.
So if we look at sort of today's market, there are over 24,500 letting and estate agencies in the UK, and there's never a dull moment. As you may have guessed by now, who is Tracy Bradley? It is me, as you've said. I'm the owner and MD of Haversley. I bought Haversley nearly 3 years ago now, having been in the property game for around 10 years. No 2 days are the same. And I have to say, I absolutely love what I do. Being able to help sort of current owners to sell and sail off into the sunset, or pursue a dream or new direction, is so exciting to see. And also, I think finding the perfect buyer for our sellers is also so rewarding.
Yeah.
And the enthusiasm a lot of our buyers have to expand their current portfolio through their first, last, or one of many acquisitions definitely gets the heart racing. So yeah, that's Haversley and that's Tracy Bradley.
So that was a wonderfully succinct summary of that. But we'll dive into a little bit more of it later on as well. But what I love about it is there's a lot of similarities here, isn't there? If you think about how wonderful it is for most agents that are helping people realize one of the biggest, decisions of their life, the move, obviously, of their home. The only thing that can compare to that, I think, is the sale of their business. So you're in a very similar experience there, aren't you? Helping these people culminate in that dream of a lifetime to get their future sorted, I suppose.
Definitely, absolutely. There is a lot of similarities between the two of us, I think.
And just talk to us about is the trend moving towards working with people like your good self there, or is there still a percentage of people that choose to try and do this, the sale of their own business by themselves? And I'm guessing, I mean, I know you're going to be biased on this, you know, why shouldn't people do that? Is it simply down to an experience angle again, or are there other reasons?
I think, you know, there's a variety of things. I wouldn't sell my own house because I actually wouldn't know where to start or what to do, and who would I go out to? How would I market it? Where would I market it? I mean, I know a lot of estate agencies get thousands of letters every week. Do you want to sell your agency? Give us a call. And all of those are very, very, very tempting. But selling your business, as with selling your house, is painful, it's time consuming, and it's complex. So, you know, in the same way that I wouldn't sell my own house, I would trust that to an expert in the industry. Yes, I will be biased and say that, you know, get someone who's an expert in the field. You know, we've got our fingers on the pulse of today's market. We can accurately value the business. You know, we've got qualified buyers that we can go out to. We know some of the, you know, some of the not so desirable buyers that are out there that will try and fleece potential sellers, offer them the world, and then actually when it gets to, you know, close to completion, they will try and negotiate the price down. You know, we are here as experts to ensure that there's a smooth, error-free sale, without buyers trying to renegotiate a price at the last minute. And this does happen a lot when people try and sell their own businesses. Obviously, we also have links into, you know, legal and accounting professionals who specialise, again, in the sale of lettings and estate agencies. And it is niche. So absolutely, you know, I think if you want to get the best deal for your business, then, you know, you need to speak to an expert in the field.
How, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. And I remember when we sold our, you know, I've sold a couple of businesses I've been lucky enough to now, and the distraction of time can be immense if you don't have the right partners. And one of the things you just spoke about there is that prevalence of kind of chipping, as you would call it, is that, does it still go on? And from what you're saying, it does go on. Is it kind of, has it always just been at the same level, or is it on the rise, or is it luckily decreasing? How would you specify that particular problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, chipping does still happen, and there are always going to be buyers that try it on. We generally know who those buyers are, and also we can help negotiate and navigate those. We know what people generally will throw in and try and chip the price. So, you know, we don't tolerate it. And as I say, we know how to negotiate those. So, you know, what we want is a smooth, error-free sale. And I think when people try and do it on their own, they're more inclined to agree to the chipping, whereas we just wouldn't stand for it unless it was an absolutely valid reason for that.
And do you, because I'm assuming some of these people do still get, you know, go on and buy agencies, so it's not like you can, or would ordinarily want to discount a lot of them, but does that help that you can kind of, you know, set the expectation level right at the beginning, and obviously, you know, let these guys know that you're wise to that game, even if you don't say it as much?
Absolutely. And we've had it before, you know, where we've had sellers who have engaged with a potential buyer, and exactly that's happened, where they've tried to chip the price. We've taken on the sale of the business, and, you know, the same potential buyer has come back and bought the business at the price that it should have been at in the first place,
Right.
purely because they know that we're not going to put up with it. So they're not going to give us any nonsense, or, you know, try it on, if you will.
There's that classic quote, isn't it, about what was it about, hiring a professional and everything else there. And I can't even remember what the actual quote is now, but the key thing is, in such a niche area, it's absolutely vital, isn't it, that you have somebody with experience. And in the way that, you know, somebody might only sell their home every 5, 10, 20 years, that's probably equally true of businesses again, isn't it? And that's where the comparison again, it really works.
Definitely, definitely. And that's where I think sort of, you know, a business like Haversley that has the expertise and specialises in the sale of lettings and estate agencies is absolutely imperative. So, you know, there will be a lot of general business sales out there or sellers out there, but, you know, they don't know the market as well as we do.
Yeah.
You know,
That experience and that knowing the players, knowing that, you know, knowing it from both sides, absolutely invaluable
yeah,
again. So
yeah.
if you talk to me, you know, how do we go about deciding whether now's the right time to sell the business? When is there such thing as an optimum time, or you know, talk us through that element of when people should begin thinking about picking up the phone to you?
So, you know, look, people sell for a variety of reasons, not just when they're in a desperate situation. And I think, you know, like we said earlier, it's not just when you're ready to sell that you need to pick up the phone. I think when you're starting to even slightly think about it, or, you know, even if you have years to go, I would say just start gearing yourself up, have these things in your mind. You know, like I say, people don't always sell when they're in a desperate situation. You know, what we're seeing is that people are deciding to sell because there are constant challenges with legislation changes. The cost of living increases, difficulty finding the right staff can be challenging. And all of those things can be motivators to sell. You know, I have so many conversations with independent, you know, agency owners who dived into lettings and estate agency 20, 30 years ago. And they're like, it's totally unrecognizable to them. And, you know, they no longer enjoy doing what they do, constantly having to ensure legislation changes are implemented and documented correctly, you know, all of that kind of thing. But then on the flip side of that, you've got owners who want to pursue something like totally different. You know, I've had a now previously, previous seller who developed his own non-alcoholic beverage, sold his agency, and is now selling that into bars all over the country. You know, I've had another one that, you know, was in the estate agency and lettings business for 15 years, who decided that they wanted to open a pottery studio. So, you know, there are so many reasons, and they are so diverse that, you know, it's kind of when you'll know when you feel ready. But I think, you know, when you're considering selling your agency, you need to think about what a successful sale looks like for you.
Yeah.
You know, obviously you want to maximize the sale price,
Yeah.
but who do you want to sell to? You know, are you going to be okay selling to a corporate? Would you prefer it to be an independent? You know, you've got options. So it doesn't have to be a distress sale. It doesn't have, you don't have to think, oh, I'm really going to have to, you know, take what I can get.
Yeah.
It's, you've got choices, you know, don't think that you'll just have to settle, you know, to put your mind at rest. You know, buyers will normally keep staff as
Yeah.
part of the sale. And we find that a lot of business owners have built great relationships with their staff, and they've got loyal staff who they want to make sure is looked after. But also something to bear in mind is that nobody buys a business to fail.
No.
So, you know, when you're at that point and you've decided that it's the right time to sell for you, you do have options, and it's going to be okay.
And that really resonates, doesn't it? Because I think you can talk about, obviously, a lot of, you know, obviously they're out to get the best deal they can do, but actually this has been their life and soul, the business, building it up there, and the idea that they're going to hand it over to somebody that's not going to get great care. They do see it as a legacy much of the time, don't they? And to have your cake and eat it, and to find the right price point, but to also find the right, you know, stakeholder or person taking that forwards is very important to a lot of businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what can people actually do to kind of I suppose facilitate getting that best thing? Is there, what would you come do? You'd have a conversation and understand what they're looking at, and then would you look at their books and then say these are areas you could work on? How does the consultative side of things actually get started, I suppose?
So I think what we want to do is we want to have an initial conversation and understand more about the business from any potential sellers. So,
Yeah.
I think you need to understand that when you get to that point where you want to sell, you need to start preparing for that. And I think initially, the best thing to do would be to speak to us and say, I'm thinking about this. Where do I go from here? And the big thing here is, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail,
Yeah.
profound work.
Yeah, not making a decision is making a decision of sorts, isn't it? Is you're not going to have all the boxes ticked if you don't know what those boxes are.
Precisely. I think any potential seller needs to get the house in order, and we can help them do that. It's by focusing on things like, your turnover, speaking to your accountant, who can start sort of showing your business in the best light, especially if you're gearing up for sale. And that's why it doesn't have to be at that moment in time when you're wanting to sell to give us a call. Give us a call before,
Yeah.
so we can start talking about all of these things.
And what do I need to do if I'm preparing to sell? What's the things that I need to kind of get in order myself? Just give us an idea of the kind of things we need to start thinking about.
Okay, so we need to know your turnover. Like I've mentioned, the amount that you're getting in for your fully managed portfolio, your let onlys, any additional income that you've got coming in.
Yep.
We want to know sort of the number of units you've got of fully managed, let onlys, that kind of thing. I think you need to get a professional valuation. So give us a call. We do free of charge valuations. And to be honest with you, I would recommend doing this every year. Give us a call every year.
Yeah.
And say, look, where am I at? Because we have a lot of sellers who call us and say, oh, Tracy, this is what I'm aiming for. This is where I'm at now. What is my business worth? And obviously that's changeable because the market is changing all the time. So I think just as a sort of focuser, do it on an annual basis until you're ready to sell. And if you're ready to sell, then, have your turnover information to hand. It's also about getting your processes and systems into place. So, I think what sometimes happens is that we get so wrapped up in the day-to-day that we're not sort of detailing what our actual processes are for certain functions in the business. So make sure that you've got those. And if you're doing those sort of as you go, it's a lot easier than trying to pull all of those things together, when it comes to selling. So just sort of good practice, make sure your compliance is up to date. Your client accounts are audited regularly, obviously. The prescribed information has been sent out and that you've got the necessary proof that these have been received. Gas safety certificates are on file. Right to rent checks have been completed. All of those kinds of things you need to make sure are in place and that are happening. And you need to think about how you're going to make your business as appealing as possible to any potential buyer. So we will obviously show your business in the best light possible, but you need to think about how you're going to sell your business as you would do if you were selling a house.
Yeah.
What little things do you need to do to make it more appealing for sale? Pull together details about your marketplace. What's your local area like? Is it a growth area? What's happening? What makes it appealing? Who are your staff? What qualifications do they have? Because they're a massive asset of the business for any potential buyer. We all know that sort of good staff are so hard to find. So, make sure that you've got sort of details about the qualifications that your staff have and where their niches are and where their strengths are and how you can develop them to, to run with the business. I think about how you're going to hand over the business, what you think any potential buyer would like to have, or that you think you could add to the value of handing the business over when completion actually happens of the sale. And then I think sort of the last thing is, think about the risks of the business.
Yep.
If the staff were to leave, what happens then? Do you have contingencies in place? Are there people that can cover? We need to make sure as well that when your business goes for sale, that there's the utmost discretion and confidentiality, because often when these things get out, it's a complete and utter nightmare. So how can you sort of reduce the risk of that? And one of those things is absolutely to, sort of keep things under your hat until a sale has been absolutely agreed, and rarely keep it under your hat until completion.
Okay. One of the things we were talking about previously was, though, that, where that keeping it under the hat stops, isn't it? Is that's not about keeping things, disclosed that you should be doing, famously like the skeletons in the cupboard. I think what you were saying previously was that's a really tricky area. Is if you think, oh, I don't want them looking at this or talking about this particular weakness of the business, the very last and worst thing for you as a business in getting the right fee is for that to come out at the end of the process, because that will then result in chipping, won't it? Am I right in thinking that's where they need to almost have this lawyer kind of confidentiality with you and say, look, you can present this in the best way, but you have to know about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is where stumbling blocks come, because people think, oh, well, they're not going to know about that. But I'm telling you now that through the due diligence process, any skeletons you've got in the closet will come out. And if we know about those things, like you've said, Simon, if we know about those things, we can manage them and we can negotiate them right from the off. Yeah. So that, we're not kind of seen to be holding anything back. We're being open and transparent appropriately and where we should be. So I think if there is anything that any potential seller is concerned about, they do need to bring it to our attention so that we can navigate it.
And that due diligence process is, I mean, by definition, there is I couldn't get my head around just how much detail these people go down. And of course, there's one or two ways. First of all, they need to understand it for the business they're getting so that they can, for the owner, take it forwards. But secondly, they're going to cover themselves legally anyway, aren't they? So you're going to be warranted or whatever else against those unknown unknowns if you try to hide stuff that is material. So it's totally self-defeating to not have that conversation with you at the earliest stage.
Absolutely. We're working for you. We're on your side. So there's no point hiding anything from us. And, as you said earlier, it's in complete confidence. And we will only share that information with discretion and when we feel the need arises. So,
cool.
Yeah.
So talk to us actually how the selling process, works. I mean, obviously it's quite, as you said, it's quite a niche area. Would you just walk us through it, how typically, how a typical sale looks?
Yeah, absolutely. So from our perspective, we would have a call from any potential seller, and we would then ask them to complete a seller questionnaire. And this is really a deep dive to what we've spoken about before, things like sort of who the shareholders are, what the turnover is, split by sales and lettings and other income, charging matrices, what the lettings portfolio split is, how many landlords, fully managed properties, HMOs, all of that kind of thing. So once we've got that through, we will review that and we will be able to firm up a valuation.
Yep.
As I mentioned, we do give valuations free of charge, which we can do sort of on an initial call, but to actually sort of firm that valuation up, we do need the more detailed information. So what would happen then is we would review the seller questionnaire, give you sort of the valuation, agree a price to go to market. Once the business has gone, we would go out to our database sort of in and around the area. And we would also put it onto our social media channels, if you're happy with that, and also on our website to advertise. From that point, it's sort of a very broad description that we give when we go out and email the database. So no one will know who you are.
Yeah.
And we would then, take in any calls of people who were interested in potentially buying a business.
Yep.
And we would qualify them to ensure that they have funds available to buy the business, and that they are genuinely seeking a great opportunity. So we would then get them to sign an NDA. No information is shared to any potential buyer without an NDA being signed.
Yep.
The information that we send across is called a buyer's information pack, which we put together from the information that has been sent to us in the seller questionnaire. And that sort of shows your business in the best light. At that point, they still don't know who you are. It's really only when they want to take things to the next level, we let them know sort of, who your business is. From which you could probably expect to meet any potential buyer and have the conversations. Maybe they'd want a little bit more information, which we would pull together. And generally from there, an offer would come in. And from that point, we would expect it to take sort of 8 to 12 weeks for completion.
And is it typical to have, on average, how many average buyers are there for an agency at the moment, or is it completely just is it completely random? I'm just trying to get a sense of how many kind of competing parties there are typically in these sales of an agency.
It's it does vary from place to place. The market is particularly buoyant at the moment. So we're seeing we've had a business that has recently gone up for sale where we've had 45 potential buyers, and these are qualified buyers who have given us proof of funding and who are ready to take the next step. So, it does vary in terms of what the portfolio looks like, etc. But I would say, sort of on average, you're probably looking at about 10 minimum.
Wow.
Potential buyers.
So I thought, okay.
Yeah, which I think is so important, because obviously what you want is there to be competition.
Yeah.
So this comes back to, why shouldn't I sell my agency on my own? We get that bidding going, we've got that competition going. So
Yeah.
which will ultimately ensure that you get the best price possible.
Perfect. And how else, and what else can Haversley do to help you, if you do want to sell? What's I mean, obviously all of this you covered on there. Is there anything we've missed out that you can actually help out with?
I think, from Haversley's perspective is that, we are here to guide you every step of the way. So from your initial thoughts of wanting to sell or ultimately wanting to sell in whatever time frame, to sort of providing with a free valuation, arranging meetings, negotiating the sale, ensuring that momentum is maintained to completion. We are there every step of the way. We do this day in, day out. So, you're left to focus on what you do best. Yeah. And we focus on our expertise and do what we do best. So, we take sort of the stress of it away from any potential seller, because we can talk them through it. We're there every step of the way. And I think that's where, we really come into our own.
And that's so important, isn't it? Because the stress point, because of the definition of what you're doing, it's going to be stressful, but you don't need to incur any more stress by either not knowing stuff or not having the time, the experience and everything else. This is obviously a tick in the box here to try and mitigate that level of pressure that there's always going to be in these in these environments.
So, you know, Haversley are here to guide you every step of the way. We've been through most of the hurdles that are going to be thrown in the mix. So,
Yeah.
you know, we're there to hold your hand and guide you through every single step, you know, and we're there to do what we know and what we have our expertise in, and you can continue doing what your expertise are in, and we'll ensure that, you know, momentum is maintained throughout the process to completion of the sale.
And this is, look, ultimately, this is what you do week in, week out, isn't it? So it's, you know,
Day in, day out,
day in,
24/7.
day out, exactly right. And the stuff that you're going, the stuff that they might only ever see once in a lifetime, you're seeing, you know, regularly, and that again is critical,
Yeah.
isn't it? Can I just
Yeah.
ask just one quick question before we conclude, because you raised it earlier. You mentioned there that obviously the corporates are just getting bigger and bigger. It's a real two-tier kind of industry at the moment, aren't you? You've got so much of the industry being one and two offices. But you mentioned there that the independents were increasingly, increasingly at the table. Is that a trend you expect to increase as well, or do you think it will start to fall back to just the corporates?
I don't think it will all fall back to the corporates. I think there are a lot of independent agencies that are growing quite rapidly. And I think, you know, they're growing through acquisition. And I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. You know, natural growth is so difficult at the moment. So yeah, growth through acquisition is rarely the only sensible way at the moment in today's
I mean,
market.
if you look at, you mentioned it a couple of times, compliance, just the, you know, the sheer hassle of obviously winning the landlords over in that lettings field, you know, you're talking about a multi-year process where a quick acquisition of a rent roll can put you, you know, way ahead of where you wanted to be, isn't it? It's like, is that a particular sweet spot? You know, I can imagine that, having spoken to so many agents who have done this successfully, that, you know, that if those agents have hit a bit of a brick wall at, you know, having 100 properties under management or 200 properties under management, and that next stage becomes very clear, is that where you see a lot of business where people are looking to get out and selling to larger agents?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the market is going more and more that way, for sure.
Yeah. And
You
so
know, and
one of the things
yeah,
that's happened because of obviously the acquisitions there is you've seen these behemoth corporates getting ever larger, and
yeah,
obviously you've got your small ones, as we said, the one and two offices, but that almost that rump in the middle has largely been, I don't want to say feasted on, but it's certainly narrowed, hasn't it, from how many there were in the past. Do you think again that's going to be the nature of the kind of the structure of the industry, or do you see some of those smaller businesses acquiring or growing organically to fill that space?
I think, you know, I think a lot of smaller businesses are going to start acquiring and growing well, not organically, but through acquisition into that space. I think you will see sort of some of the, you know, like I said, you've got a lot of independent agencies that were quite small, but are actually now expanding quite aggressively through acquisitions. So I think they're going to give the corporates a run for their money, to be honest.
Well, look, we've seen some of your absolutely fantastically happy clients, and obviously we see the work you're doing out there. So again, I have remembered the quote, by the way, that I was struggling for before. It was Red Adair, wasn't it, who famously said, if you think it's expensive to hire a professional to do the job, wait until you hire an amateur. And I really can't think of anything more perfect in terms of summarizing what we've been talking about here today. Well, look, Tracy, I think thank you so much for taking us through that. It's such a difficult niche area. I was going to say whether it was lucky enough or unlucky enough, but it was actually lucky enough. And it was lucky because we had experts like you to assist us. Because famously or infamously, where they say there are no stupid questions, and I certainly asked plenty of those when I was going through it, but at least we got the answers back we need to help us through that. For today, I want to say thank you so much for taking that time, and I hope to catch up with you soon.
Thanks so much, Simon. Really appreciate it. And, you know, if anyone wants to give me a call and just have a chat, then please pick up the phone.
Yes, of course.
Anytime.
Everybody remember this, go to Haversley on kerfuffle.com, contact us on there, or go to obviously the Haversley site itself, and you can find Tracy there waiting for your call. Thanks again. Cheers, guys.